In today's video, we're going to focus in on Apple, specifically with the opening range breakout strategy. Now we're going to turn the opening range breakout into a follow-along journey where each piece of the backtester that we test gives us one clue to the overall puzzle of how do you trade Apple using the opening range breakout. Now for all Volatility Box members, you can download the backtester that I'll be using in today's video, and you can use it on your favorite markets. In this video, we'll be using it on Apple, but you can repeat the same process on whichever market and on whatever time frame you want. You can sign up for the Volatility Box membership on our website, and if you're already a member, I'll leave a link to download the backtester in the description box below. Now, before we dive into the specific backtests of Apple, a quick overview of the terminology you'll need to know. This is what we call the half range. So we've initially here created an opening range for the first 30 minutes of trading once the market's opened. That's 6:30 to 7 a.m. Pacific is the backtester's input. And there we have this concept of a half range, which is half of the opening morning breakout range. And we project that same half range on whichever side the breakout happens. In this case today, we had a long side breakout, and that's why we have the half range plotting above us. And this level right here is what we would call the full range projection. The full range is simply taking the full ORB range and then projecting that to the upside. That's pretty much all the terminology you'll need to know in order to follow along with this video. Now let's start first with the 30-day opening range breakout backtest. Here's the results of what parameters we've tested. For our entry, we have a simple breach of the opening range breakout. So as soon as we cross that upper level, that's when the trade triggers. For our target, we have the half range target. For our stop, we have the half range stop. So this is our most narrow entry. And in terms of the ORB range, everything we'll talk about today is the first 30 minutes. Now, if we use all of these parameters and we focus on the long side trade, since that's the one that triggered today, we can see we had 8 winners, 7 losers, a net win rate of about 53%. Using just that, we can deduce a few things here. The first is that our win rate has been only about 50%, call that more or less a coin flip over the last 30 days. So with that piece of information, we can essentially reverse engineer the fact that the ORB tends to come back to our half range level, so what would be considered a pullback, about 50% of the times before we go and actually hit the target. So this gives us our first little clue around the entry, and that's waiting for a pullback to the halfway point of the ORB range, at least for the long side entry. That tends to be a good idea. You get it about 50% of the time, so it is a way to help reduce risk while allowing you to get a slightly better entry. Now let's keep diving a little bit deeper. What happens if we take the stop right here from the half range and we instead change that to a full range stop, meaning we give it more room? This allows us to test how effective are pullbacks. So let's test that next. So now if we continue with the same idea of a backtest, but this time we've changed our stop parameter. So these are the different parameters, the same entry, we're looking for the opening range breakout breach, the same target, just a half range target, but this time we've widened the stop from a half range to now a full range. What we're trying to find out here is if we do give this trade more room to have a pullback, do we then tend to bounce all the way up back to the half range target? That would also mean that your risk to reward is now skewed in your favor, risking 1 to make 2. So if we take a look at what this one little tweak does to our back range or our backtest statistics, we now have 11 winners and just 4 losers, and our win rate has bumped up to about 73.3%. So using that, we can deduce one additional piece of information here, which is by increasing the stop length from that half range to a full range length, we were able to improve the win rate to above 70%. So we went from more or less, 53% now up to 70%. That is a nice improvement in the overall win rate, and it gives us one additional piece of information. That information is if we do have a pullback entry where now we can use the stop outside of the full range, we've still managed to keep the risk the same as what we would have had we just been targeting this half and half from the get-go. The reason for that is we've waited for a pullback, we've pulled back half of the range, which means now our risk is really 1/2 here, and in terms of our target, we've been able to go for double the target, so we've skewed the risk to reward. As a result, we now know that, hey, a stop outside of the full ORB range tends to improve your win rate up to about 73%. And if we still go for that same half range target, that now allows us to have a skewed risk to reward, 1 to 2. Now there's one last thing we can test here, which is, okay, so now we know waiting for a pullback is a good idea. Can we be a little bit greedy and instead of just a half range target, we go for the full range target? How effective is that? So now if we continue the backtest one more time, and we change the last parameter that we have, where now we've changed our target to be a full range target, we have the same stop of a full range stop, so now we're going for the full length on both sides, and the same 30-minute opening range breakout range. We can now take a look at the statistics here and see that this drops back down to more or less 44%, which is sub 50%. So we can conclude that, hey, increasing the target from that half range to a full range target, trying to be a little greedier in how much we can get, decrease the overall win rate to below 50%, which tells us, if we were to deduce that back to our trade plan connected to it, that we failed to make it all the way back to the full range target, even though we've given it a wider stop. The half range is where the ORB inside of Apple tends to more or less exhaust, and by waiting for that pullback, you're able to skew the risk to reward in your favor. So if we use this last backtest to conclude what information that gives us, it tells us that there's slim chances of us going all the way back up to the full range target. Being greedy here doesn't necessarily work out more times than not, just 44% of the time. So now if we put all of these puzzle pieces together, here's what Apple looked like today with the opening range breakout. If we start by piecing together the first piece of our plan, which was around the entry, we were waiting for a pullback since we saw that, hey, that half range entry, so once we have the entry, if we give it a half range stop and if we give it a half range target, we tend to go to the target first only about 53% of the time. So that tells us that, hey, the other 47% of the time we have a pullback, and today we did get that pullback opportunity. Now we try and measure, okay, well, how effective is entering long at this pullback to try and play the same ORB? To try and understand that, we pretended that, hey, we gave it a stop outside of the full range now, and we were just going for our half range for our target. That backtest told us that, hey, if you gave it this much length in terms of our stop, and you were going for this much in terms of a reward, you tended to have a reward more than 70% of the time. So now we concluded that, hey, if you have a pullback here, we've been able to reduce that risk by half and still play this overall move that tends to happen about 70% of the time had you given this trade the additional risk. So if we conclude all of that now, we piece this together, we had the pullback to the half range, we gave this a stop outside of our opening range breakout range, which is just the half range length in terms of our actual stop length. In terms of our target, we went for the half range target, which really is double what we've risked. We risked 1. We're risking 1 now to make not only this one, but also one additional half range on top of that, which means we're trying to make 2 for every 1 that we've risked here. You can see what happens in Apple. We go straight to our half range target. We fall short of the full range target before Apple then starts to exhaust and have a little bit of a reversal from that point. One more time for all Volatility Box members, you can download the opening range breakout backtester and give it a go on your favorite markets. I'll leave a link to download it in the description box below. For everyone else, you can learn more about the Volatility Box on our website here, and I'll leave a link to the indicator as well, the opening range breakout indicator, which is free for everyone, and we built it together, and that should at least give you a nice starting point in case you don't have the backtester to play around with this manually. I hope you found this video useful. Take care, everyone, and good luck trading.